Welcome, everyone. Today, we are very lucky to have Lisa Reardon with us to talk about a fascinating approach to EFT tapping called quantum EFT. She's one of the few people in the world certified in this particular approach, which is going to give you some really interesting, fascinating tools that you might be able to apply for yourself right after listening to this. Lisa is also a mentor in EFT Universe, where I recently completed clinical EFT certification. So she has a broad range of experience with this, and we're very much looking forward to learning more. So thank you, Lisa, for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And I'm going to assume that people watching this who would click on a video about quantum EFT are probably already familiar with EFT tapping. If for some reason you're not and you're still watching, I'll link to a video that just gives sort of the overview of what it is. But it's something I've loved for a long time. And I first came across it really through YouTube and people like Brad Yates. And what was your original exposure and maybe your original training with EFT?
Oh gosh, yes. So I'm one of the early adopters from the late 90s, actually, with Gary Craig, who
Oh, cool.
developed EFT, as in the algorithm of the face and the upper body points. So I found him. I think the universe wanted me to find it. And because I could feel how it helped to regulate my emotions, I thought, oh, there's something in this because it's helping me get into the body instead of just dealing with my thoughts.
Mhm.
It was letting my body speak. So yes, I used it with myself, and then in 2010, it was 2010, 2009, when the World Tapping Summit with the Ortners, and carried on doing that every year. And then I thought it's about time I got some certification, because I was getting the nudge again from the universe to say, Lisa, I need you. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to need your help to deal with anxiety, depression, pressures of life. So that was, and I wanted something that was backed with sound science. So,
Mm.
and I know Dawson Church's work. So that's kind of the route that I've taken to get with clinical EFT. And then my trainer, who trained me in clinical EFT, was the founder of quantum EFT, and that spoke to my soul. So we can go into that more if you like.
Oh,
But yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Is that Jenny? Jenny Johnston?
yeah, that's Jenny Johnston. So she developed. She got curious about putting EFT in with working with time, place, and space. So working more in the quantum field, if you like, that anywhere across time, place, and space, we're connected with all of it. Like, we can't not be. And so she's been exploring that and developed a program, and I just went, yeah, this is speaking to me. This feels true. And so yeah, got curious and got qualified. So it's an honor to be able to be part of that, and let people experience it. And great deep healing at the root causes can really happen for people. So here I
Very,
am.
very cool. Yeah. So this is what it will be fun to talk about because I just maybe it's a small sample size, but my personal experience is usually the kind of person who's looking at something like EFT, certain open-mindedness to begin with, and it's often not a big jump to start talking about even what you just opened the door with a little bit. Things like energy, which of course is part of EFT, but then you can get into things like time and space and quantum. And that's actually becoming a lot more popular too. You know, Joe Dispenza is getting very popular and he emphasizes the quantum a lot in terms of, I think it's become a useful I guess I would use the word non-religious way to help a lot of people conceptualize this idea of connecting to something that is non-physical and like
Yes.
bigger than the body. Like when you use the word quantum, even maybe not necessarily what how quantum EFT specifically is defined, but I'm just curious what that evokes for you because I think as soon as people see quantum EFT, each person who sees it already has a certain idea.
Yeah. Oh, great question. And I'm certainly no quantum physicist,
Yeah,
so
me
it's a
neither.
very personal, it's a personal energy. My description of it would be there's in my physical form, limited in this physical form, but I feel that there is a bigger part of me. So in that so I am connected to something as a bigger part of me. And there is also, I don't know, so I had an experience of dealing with things in this physical life, let's say about fears and that sort of thing, but the pattern would keep showing up. And one of my limiting beliefs, or one of my core beliefs, was around it's not safe to speak up.
Mm.
And it wasn't anything to do in this life, but there was like a real deep stain on wood essence of a memory. I didn't have a picture, but it was just this feeling of this is deeper than just this lifetime. And I'm not a past life regressionist either, but we do start to dance in that as a possibility of, as a soul, let's say, there was something when I experienced a quantum EFT session, I literally got an image of, they used to burn healers and educators, if you like, at the stake. It wasn't safe to speak up and back in that energy of that lifetime. And I just got this image, and it was like, and it was so clear. And I just went with it because it was speaking to my soul. It was like this, I remember this. So it wasn't a thought, it was my body remembered somehow. So the quantum, the scientists have talked about, some of the scientists were saying that, we've got our 3D DNA, but they were calling the rest of the DNA junk DNA. And
Literally
it's
use the
like,
term junk DNA, right?
literally
Yeah.
using the word junk. And it's like, but our creator, whatever you choose to call that, creator,
Mm-hmm.
source, universe, God, it doesn't make junk. All that probably meant was they didn't understand what that other 97% is. And as they're now able to study more of the quantum mechanics, and I certainly can't go into descriptions about that, but they're starting to appreciate that actually we have multidimensional layers of our DNA that are held there in a magnetic form, that all our lifetimes, if you like, are stored in that multidimensional layers of our DNA, and it can be expressing in this present 3D form that we are here now. So it starts to get into that real creative soup, if you like, of connection and energies that are just sort of familiar somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's sort of putting a framework to what I've certainly and specifically experienced working with you, which we could talk about in a minute, but
Sure.
um, that I think many people can relate to the idea of there is some what feels like very deep pattern, some deep fear, some deep sense of, oh, like maybe I need to be perfect, or I'm always afraid that people are like coming after me, or that it's just not okay to speak my feelings. And you work, even if they are the person who's like working on themselves, doing EFT, for example, they don't find anything specific. You do
Mm.
not find a specific event. The relationship with their parents does not match the energy they have around not feeling safe, and that there is something embedded in us, even though neither you or I can get into the quantum physics of it all, but that there are traces of things, whether that's literally from the past, is almost irrelevant in the context of this being a tool to help us work through stuff that you can't necessarily pinpoint a specific event, and to not let that be a place where you get stuck, which is I've experienced that can happen when there doesn't seem to be a logical
Yeah.
explanation. Even in some inner work in EFT, people can get stuck on the idea of, well, but I have to find an originating cause that makes sense to me. And I think opening the door to that, because I trained with someone who had a burned at the stake image. I worked with a client yesterday who had that come up so you're working with someone and images and feelings come up that feel like they happened. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily feel like, we all can know the difference between I'm seeing an image of someone being burned versus I remember this the way I remember that thing in fifth grade. It feels like there's a connection to it. Is that kind of what you're describing with but this
That's right.
specifically gets into ways of investigating that?
Yes. So you don't have to believe in order for this to work. So the language that I use when I'm working with someone, like a case of a person who didn't believe in past lives. So that's okay. It's not about me putting my beliefs onto them. All I would invite people to do is to be open to the possibility of, if there's a pattern that's playing out in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and going at it through a conscious, and even with EFT, like, what is the emotion to do with this present day event? And it still keeps showing up. It may be that it's not getting back to the core, like where it first began.
Mm-hmm.
So what I said to this person was, would you be willing to at least accept, if I use the words with you, it is my intention to process and release this right back to the origins of wherever it began. So I'm not telling them wherever it began. And so what that does is it's telling the unconscious, the subconscious, so it's getting out of here, because this is the gatekeeper of don't go there, don't go
Yes.
there. But then if we're tapping at the same time, we're inviting the body and what is stored in our cells, what is stored in those multidimensional layers. It might just come up with I don't know, a feeling or some imagery, which at the conscious mind might kick in and go, but I don't believe in past lives. But the body is saying, here it is, here it is. So if we just at least have someone be open to just be open to what comes up. And let's just tap anyway and follow it and see what comes out at the other end of it. So there's no having to see anything.
Mm-hmm.
We just go. It's very much client-led. It's a very gentle process. I mean, you've experienced it. And we just let the body speak. We let the unconscious speak. And it may have been the first time it's truly had a time to actually say what's still or express in the way the body does, the language of the body, there's feelings and emotions and imagery, to actually let that out. One of my clients, when I worked with her, she has a history, she's present day, of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and she's under the care of a team as well, and I'm part of the support team. And when we did this, wherever it began, she said, and I said, where are you? And she said, I'm in utero. I'm in the womb. And my mum she'd lost 2 babies before me. She was told to get pregnant again straight away. And I'm that baby. She said, but mum is so stressed. So what happens for that baby is she's been absorbing all of those stress hormones. And so she had come out as a fearful child, through no fault of anyone. It was just showing up in her. She's in that soup of stress. So what we did was go back and give that little one, let her, like bringing in, we did sparkling glitter amniotic fluid of love and I'm safe. And then we did working on the mum, tapping on her. So we can do that in time, place, and space. Let's just give the mum what she needs, because she's, so we can go along that timeline. And this was in present day. So we did her present day timeline for doing quantum. So it doesn't have to be past life as such. It's just whatever pops up, we go where we go. So.
That's beautiful. So it's a bit of a opening the door or setting a framework where whatever comes up from the system, we are treating that as the guide and the place to go, and sort of this invitation to almost disregard whether or not it makes sense logically. And so there's like an emphasis on that as opposed to some other frameworks where the emphasis may almost lean into, okay, let's find the event in fifth grade, for example. This is sort of
Yeah.
like, if I'm seeing myself as a, samurai, this is something that actually happened to me 1,500 years ago. Instead of discounting that or trying to like understand the symbolism of it, it's like, no, we're just going to go with that experience and let whatever unfolds unfold. And I can tell you from my experience, I think anyone listening to just start opening to this, it can be super valuable even in your own exploration, to just start to, because luckily I kind of learned this earlier on, to think of what comes up from the body and the nervous system and the imagery as being the source of the information. My mind might interpret it, but it's not the source, it's just the interpreter. So if whether it literally happened, whether I literally was a samurai in some quantum space-time thing, or that's the symbolism that mythologically my nervous system could best represent what was actually being stored, if we let ourselves just go with that, it can go into really deep places. And I know from experience that it's not, want to make the distinction that this isn't like you get a reading and someone goes like, oh, your mom was stressed, you were stressed, now I have an intellectual understanding, and oh, now I can explain why this PTSD is appearing because I have this perhaps factual story, which doesn't, I mean, not to diminish it, but doesn't really accomplish it that much. When you're in this process, you feel yourself there. It's, again, as real as a memory. And so you are actually experiencing yourself, or you're experiencing yourself on the stake, where the ashes or whatever it is starting to be burned, and you actually feel that process taking place. And when you're being guided through the tapping, you are actually sending the calming signals and doing all the great stuff that EFT does to that very alive energy. So you're actually processing things, as opposed to getting a reading of your past that you can now use to explain your emotions that don't necessarily change.
That's right. And I don't, although I work very intuitively with my guides and higher self, this isn't about that. So maybe we'll get nudges, but this is very much about, as with all EFT, it needs to be client-led, as in what is showing up for the person themselves. So in that case, the one with the person on the stake, so let's say they have an essence of that. In that case, it's not about re-traumatizing the person, that they have to feel that. So it's a freeze frame of that memory. Let's get him or her, them out of there, get them out, like freeze frame it so that they don't have to feel that again. And in cases like that, so we're now going to start getting into, as a soul in a human form, having that soul go up to, if you're into like the whole soul planning, like what is the life purpose of that soul choosing that lifetime where they ended up being on the stake. So have them float up and go and get like the higher learning. So when we're in survival mode, we can't access that higher wisdom or the higher purpose of why we're here. So if we have that soul then go and connect back to that soul planning meeting with their soul family, who are all agreeing to play certain roles, like even the crowd that might have been watching that horrible event take place, whatever that was, having that soul being able to look at it from a higher purpose, like, why did I choose that at a soul level? So it starts to open up more around, actually, I created that as a soul. I came in, I had a woman earlier this week and we did a version of it, and she said, I kept trying to come back in to a lifetime to bring my healing message. And every time I got taken out, like, so we were working on the energies of that lifetime didn't support the gifts that I had to bring. So she had a higher learning around, I keep trying to bring in my gifts. So we worked with that. And then present day, the language was tapping in. Those energies back then didn't support it, but the energies of today do. And now it's my time to show my gifts. Now it's time to shine. So it's like getting the learnings from that, but then also bringing it back into present day to bring those gifts in and move it across the timeline in present day. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's a very powerful process once you clear things at a core level, because then it lets us free ourselves to become amazing. Like, we're not limited by old energies. It's very freeing.
So as an entry point, we're looking at essentially, like any good healing, in theory, we're trying to get to a root cause. But this is opening the gate to a way wider interpretation of where that root cause might be. So it's sort of going beyond that perspective of, well, the root cause must be something from Evan as a baby to Evan as an adult, to forget all of that and just explore what comes up as we follow the energy, which can start with something as a symptom or a feeling or a pattern. And as we do it and we work and we just let the images and the emotions and come up and not limit it on the facilitator side. And so I'll ask you about some of those tools that you use to kind of take it to that place but we're starting with a much wider timeline and a wider perspective on what quote unquote root cause actually means.
Because the root cause may go back beyond what we physically know in this present day life. It may be some curse that was put on. They used to put curses on people. So, if someone comes in present day and they feel cursed, but it doesn't make sense in this. So they may have that in their kind of ancestral trauma, which has come through the lineage, generational trauma. It's coming through the lineage of that. So that's a burden that can weigh heavy and we won't necessarily, it can't be understood consciously, but our bodies have, it's like, don't do that. Like, it's sending out this warning signal of don't go there. It's not safe to speak up in public or whatever. And it limits us. Those become limiting beliefs. But if we go back to those core beliefs, yes, it might come from a way earlier time that we didn't even know about.
And I think one of the useful things about that for those who are open to it, and I think the more you've experienced something that doesn't make logical sense, the more open you are to hearing things like this, because it starts to, you hit the wall enough times and you're like, okay, clearly, whatever I believe stops mattering as much. And it's like, there has to be something else to this, and to be willing to kind of explore from a perspective of, yeah, this could go beyond what makes logical sense or go beyond a specific event. But I think it's really important in the context of like self-compassion, which is probably one of the things I talk about the most on this channel in terms of like tapping and inner work, because a lot of inner work, especially from a modern perspective, is very, at least Western, gets very self-helpy and very like, find the problem, find the block, fix that block. Where's that limiting belief? Oh, the fear of speaking up, that's just a limiting belief. You just need to tap away that belief. And that makes you feel kind of inferior when it's not just going away. You can't find a cause. But when you start to realize, like, no, there can be deep ancestral traumas and other things connected to this, suddenly people stop being so hard on themselves and going, Yeah, this wasn't just a simple little, oh, I'm afraid to speak up because I'm weak, which is often the modern interpretation. Oh, I'm just afraid to speak up because I'm not man enough. Meanwhile, you start opening the floodgates, and you're like, whoa, okay. No wonder I couldn't just like do a couple videos or read a book and get rid of this. And I'm beating myself up for something that actually goes way deeper. Have you found that reaction with people? It's something I've
Oh,
seen before.
absolutely. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head. This is about having loving compassion. You know, there's no one has ever done any growth or learning out of a fear or a beat me up kind of, you know, where
Mhm.
our inner critic or our inner voice might be saying, oh, you should be doing better than you are now. Like no one ever grows in that sort of energy. So the frame that I like to hold, and look, I've been through my own journey of this, you know, there was this, why is it though, although I've got these gifts, I was keeping myself hidden for so many years?
Mhm.
You know, I had a voice, an inner critic that was trying to take me out. And it wasn't until I got the wider, it was more like a knowing. It's like, oh, now I get it. It's like it isn't anything that's happened this life. But in my bones and I felt it to be true. It was like once I got and I had held that, and I had someone hold that loving, compassionate space for me to let me plug back in and get that knowing, then I could heal that. And now I'm released. Like
Mm.
that, you know, we talk about emotional freedom techniques. So
Right.
emotions, freedom from self, freedom from limiting beliefs. Once that's free, it is like those peeling the layers of the onion, but it literally is like, oh, now I've pulled that weed out right at the roots. It's absolutely being pulled out. And those gifts just I was looking at the flowers behind and behind, you know, it's like now it's time to shine.
Nice.
So we can try and use the conscious mind to motivate us, and that will only work so far. The ego, you know, working on that conscious energy will only take us so far. But if we hold a space of loving compassion and curiosity, I wonder, I wonder where this first began. I'm open to being taken to where this is, whether it consciously it makes sense or not. I'm open to seeing what wants to be revealed, because I'm tired of this pattern and it's time for me to step through this now. You know, like we get quite instructive with it to go, just take
Mm.
me. What's the worst that can happen? I still keep my same pain and misery. You know, that's a choice. So yeah,
It's
exciting.
interesting because it seems like a lot of this has to do with increasing levels of surrender. You know, how much
Yes.
control do you feel like you need to be in with the technique? And all, none of that is bad or wrong, but it's sort of getting this comfort level of like, look, I don't understand any of this. Why don't this pain or trauma or my body, you just take me on whatever journey, and I become less and less the detective who's like trying to look at the data and trying to unpack it, and being more like, okay, you lead the way, client led, but also like energy led as far
Hmm.
as where it takes you. And I wanted to ask you, because when we did, I don't know, it was maybe our second or third session together, there was a point where, okay, it's like, okay, we're doing tapping, we've got an issue. I I have plenty of issues, so whatever it was that day, and there was a like a distinct moment where you said, would you be interested in, I don't know if you specifically said like, would you be interested in quantum EFT, but there was a crossroads where it could have gone very, let's say, clinical, and it could have gone quantum. Now, and in that moment, like, what's the difference in terms of how you, if I had said do clinical versus do quantum, what are the differences in those beginning steps?
Okay. Okay. So if the audience like, so for clinical EFT, and the word clinical being implied that there's a set algorithm, we use the subjective units of distress to measure the intensity of an emotion or a feeling at the start, and then we remeasure that at the end. So it's using a quantitative measurement to clear and working on. So it can be used in research. So that's basically where the name clinical comes from. It's something that's reproducible. And so the challenge I have, even though I'm an EFT mentor as well, so I have clinical EFT students, so I have to have my clinical hat on.
Yes.
But I so love working in that sort of quantum field. And at that stage, you were a student, so I was sort of doing the clinical, I suppose, as a way to model what is clinical EFT to help you on your studies as well.
Yes.
But then it became very clear for me. I got the nudge, which is my intuition, to go, this man is ready to, I could feel there was so much possibility of this energy there's something else for him if he wants to go there. So I always do it as an invitation. And I'm totally fine with either. Like, we would have got results staying with the clinical, just following the body, whatever it's speaking, absolutely fine. A really good set of tools. But I could feel, because you've done a lot of work on yourself and have cleared a lot, and you're willing to work hard, and a great client to work with, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I just sense that you're curious to go where this really goes. So I just offer it, and you totally said, yes, please. I'm keen. So we did. And so that's where the language starts to be, there is a sense of, yes, we're here in a physical form, in a 3D form. We are a bigger part of something bigger. So we do start to bring in guides and higher self. So I will ask someone, what is your sense? What is your words around a non-physical support team? Like, who would that be to you? So I want to get, if they believe it or not, or if they've got words they would prefer me to use. So I'm not pushing any models of the world onto anyone. I'll just go, what is their sense of, are we just here in this 3D physical form, this only body? Do I believe I'm bigger, part of something bigger? So I'll just follow that lead as well, and I'll start bringing in words of, it is my intention, my instruction, asking my guides and higher self to help me process and release this wherever it began. This pain in my stomach, whatever it is, we still work with the body's sensations, or all this fear, even if I don't know where this fear came from. Yes. I want to be free of it because it's blocking me, and I want to be free. So we'll just stay using with the client's words, but we start to open up more possibilities. And then, again, bringing in the with the DNA, so our 3D DNA in this body this time, but then opening up to the possibility. And I instruct the multidimensional layers of my DNA, where all my lifetimes are stored, to process and release this pattern. I'm stepping through this window of opportunity now. So you're starting to bring in, we don't have to go into each and every time. So we can be more instructive with this and say, it's like pushing the delete button on a folder on your computer. It's like, this pattern is done. So we don't have to go, we might have to work with a couple of events, but actually we are way more powerful if we truly believe and truly know how powerful we are. We can just go, I'm going to step through this limiting pattern now. Once you've cleared that core trauma, I'm going like this because it's like the ripples. I don't know what your experience was, but it's like the ripples continue. It's gentle, but it's powerful.
Yeah, I'll happily share mine in detail. And so there's some different questions early on that sort of open, again, they, in the language themselves, they sort of imply looking at something a little more beyond the scope of the body or the recent events. I mean, if you ask someone, what's your relationship to the idea of higher guides or higher self, you've set a very different tone. That's not something you
Yeah, bringing
necessarily, if
in
you say
another
that to someone.
component. Yeah, yeah.
And so,
And if someone says absolutely that I don't believe in that, I won't. That's okay, because I'll work with whatever language works, because the body knows it doesn't actually matter. You don't have to believe, because while you're tapping, it still works. So that's okay. It's
that's
all okay.
great. Yeah. So some of the areas that get introduced in quantum are this perspective of a higher self or guides, soul, like you mentioned, watching from above, and actually using the language of soul or soul family and choice. You mentioned there was something else that just escaped my mind, but yeah, the guides, higher self, a DNA, and the idea
Mm-hmm.
of actually sending a message or an instruction to the DNA. Are there any other things that are sort of in the toolkit of quantums that
So
are
we'll bring
unique?
in the word Akash, the human Akash, which is the summary of all our lifetimes, which is stored in the multidimensional layers of our DNA. So it's always part of us. So that's another, and so those lives are stored there, but also the gifts. So
Mm.
anything we've learned in a life, we learn things. We come here, we learn, we clear stuff, and we learn. That's all still part of us, and we can access those. So once we've cleared that survival part, that the limiting beliefs and things, then we can start to go into higher purpose. So what is my life purpose? What am I here to learn? And once we get a sense of that life purpose, it's like I actually now don't need to suffer anymore, because I know my life purpose. I've got my
Mm.
learning. Now let me play. So yes, the Akash. So Jenny Johnston, back in 2012, being a very experienced EFT practitioner and trainer, met with Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon. So the work comes from Cryon, who's a collective consciousness, who's, I don't know if people are familiar with the work. So a lot of that, where they're talking about the human Akash, the higher self, the soul. So that's what the blend of where this has come from, where the quantum EFT has come
Oh,
from.
wow. So there's a channeled work component that
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
he that
So
is a book that already exists, or
yes.
this
Well,
was unique to quantum EFT.
so Monica Morani, who is Lee Carroll's partner, has written a book to summarize the teachings of Cryon, which
Okay.
explains around the human Akash and soul and higher self, and it's got a lot in there. But
Yeah.
she's collated a lot of the channelings over the last 30 years. So there's a lot in there. Jenny Johnston's got 2 books that she has written. One is Tapping into Past Lives,
Mm.
so where she's talking about the protocol. So you were saying about the words. There's a sort of language that helps facilitate letting the body go where it wants to go. And the other one is Your Past Life Inheritance. So she's got 2 books on her website, which people can, if they're curious, to go and have a look, or have a look at her work on her website. She's at quantumeft.com.au. So she's got information there. And as the founder of this work, I'm definitely doing a shout out to her. So
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't had the chance to work with her one on one yet, but I've been on some of the calls as a student where, yeah, I love her. She's great. I mean, I haven't had much personal, any real one on one interaction with her, but,
I'm a bit
um,
of a fan. Don't let her know that.
oh yeah, yeah, please do. Yeah, she's great. And so, yeah, that's interesting. So I didn't know about that aspect of it. So so Jenny, inspired or influenced by some of those teachings, integrated that into her already being like a master EFT practitioner, and then through that sort of codified and So I imagine there are some techniques that have not strict, because EFT is really strict, but like certain questions, certain directions, certain techniques that you use
Yes.
within that
So
framework.
yeah. So Jenny met with Lee Carroll and said, "Look, I'm really keen to blend these together. What do you think? Are you okay with it?" And Lee said, "Yes, go for it." So the permission was given to blend the work of Cryon with Jenny's EFT knowledge. She has developed the protocol, which is this sort of language. So in terms of certification, to be a quantum EFT practitioner, there is quite a rigorous training,
Mm.
not unlike the clinical EFT certification, actually. So it's quite rigorous to be a practitioner. And again, because we're working with people who may have really big traumas of horrible things happening to them in earlier life. If you think about some of the horrible stuff they used to do to people, centuries ago. So you need to know how to handle that well and keep someone safe as they process this. So it isn't about throwing someone literally into the fire again.
Yeah.
It has to be done really well and very gently and honoring. And yes, so there's a certain, it's not scripted per se, but there's certain protocols or certain language that helps facilitate the process to happen. And we're not cookie cutter practitioners. So I am using my intuition, like my sense with you that day, if it's the one I'm thinking about, is I got a very clear message was, he wants to go there, just offer it to him and see what he says.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I got that message. So that's why I put it to you. It was like we could have gone either way, and they both were absolutely fine. You would have got results. But I sensed you wanted to play there, so we went.
Yeah, my background is more in that direction and like talking to parts and then the clinical EFT is like newer for me. But when I did it, I wanted to do it, very accurately and in the way. So because I feel like that's the best way to learn something. And then, like you said, with especially when you're in that territory, I mean, it's impossible to not. You couldn't do it right if you can't improvise when you're dealing with energy that works like that because it's so alive. It's like dancing. I mean, I'm a jazz musician for a living, so that's a very clear metaphor. Like if you try to just play the part and just say, "Well, no, no, we have to stick to this pattern," life doesn't behave that way. So you have to be able to kind of adapt your languaging and your tone and how much you push and how much you pull back based on what everything is doing. So, what's really interesting about this is that I feel like that territory of talking about, Akashic records and, whether it's literal or not, your past lives and the different things you carry with you. And, the mother's womb thing is scientifically real. I just learned about that, how you like borrow the vagus nerve from your mom and her trauma literally gets imprinted to you, which actually explains not my personal life, but things I observed as a kid, where we were like, how does this kid so young have these? Like, oh, okay, makes sense now, right? Um, so it's fascinating to see that. But I feel like a lot of the content, you could say, around that is sort of just like information. So you've got a lot of people who kind of know this stuff and like, yeah, I've tuned into this about past lives and Akashic records, and like you get really into it, but it doesn't actually do anything a lot of the times. And so this is combining, like you just have this cool knowledge and sometimes ways of explaining yourself, which has, I'm not saying that has no value, but to use that in such a way where you're using a technique that's designed to work with trauma and clear
Yes.
energy, you get to take that incredibly fascinating world of all of this stuff, but not just be like an interesting way of explaining, oh, this is why I'm afraid of dogs, to like
Yes.
actually, really deeply clearing whatever that root stuff might be. So I hope yeah, I hope more of that, if community would be the word, who's like all in with, reading about Akashic records and things, can like find this to really use that interest to be something that's incredibly powerful as opposed to just a form of like self-discovery.
Nice. Yeah, that's that thing. It's like knowledge is one thing, but what if you were also able to take the tapping to that knowledge and, like you say, to truly release it at its core at an energy level? Because we're working, you mentioned being a jazz musician and those nuances, it's vibration, right? This is the same. It's like, let's clear the vibration and the energy of the body as well. And we've been in a society of wanting to stay in our head, like that has become king, and we have lost the wisdom of our bodies and the language of our bodies, which is our emotions, our feelings, being able to connect with the four elements. Like our predecessors were very in touch with that world. And we have become so focused on from the neck up. It's all around thoughts, and we try to override it with thoughts and ego. And meanwhile, there's all this part of us that has so much that for some have lost touch with, or are mourning that, and they want to get back in touch with it. And this is a way to honor that and bring it back in, which I'm really excited to be part of, and has been part of my big healing journey as well, which is why now I work in the field of helping people also feel that.
That's
it's like
great.
a calling. This is part of my life purpose, so I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
visible.
sure it is. Yeah, because you're very good at it, and that
Mm.
because that is another language from the
Yeah.
neck down. It's a language of symbolism and feeling and energy and stuff you can't believe even exists in yourself, and memories and experiences that will just really literally blow your mind because your mind can't even understand or process it. It just kind of short circuits it, and that's a good thing because it kind of takes you get into this space. So for me, when we did it, I have always had a real strong aversion to knives. Don't like to see them. I mean, it's not gone, but I remember as a child, if I heard the word blood, there was a pop song at the time that I liked, but it said the word bloodstains on the carpet is one of the lyrics, and this was on the radio, and I would like flood. Because I'm hyper visual, so anytime someone says something to me, I see it usually, and so I would see that image, and just I would see blood on the carpet, and it would send me into I'd be a mess. And I'm a really young kid here, and I don't have any really clear memories of anything actually happening to me with blood or knives. But knives, even seeing them sometimes can trigger that response, and I can start seeing some pretty unpleasant things. So it's still weird for me to hold them, but it's like it's evolved. So anyway, when we did the session, I don't know why that came up, but that similar aversion, that really intense body level thing was coming up, and you probably couldn't have not gone there if you tried, because you felt how strong that was active in me, and I was like, yeah, this is beyond like some of the other approaches that we might use in that moment if you're willing to go there. And so I was feeling all of that, and before you knew it, I was in the first person, and I had experienced actually a version of this once before in a smaller detail, and it was kind of almost traumatic, the memory of this experience. But I was sort of back there, and I'm very first person, and it's very tribal. It looks very old tribal days. I'm wearing basically like a loincloth, and that's it. And I've got this knife, and I am doing some major damage to people, which, the thought of doing that now, like, has such an intense reaction in my body. But I don't know if I don't know if you remember like what
I do remember
some of the
quite
tapping
clearly.
was. If we tapped on him as him, or
Yes.
is that what we did?
Yes. Some of the phrases I remember, and again, a lot of these kind of come in as more intuitively. And you said, I'm killing people.
Mm.
There's only me and I think someone else left. And I said it was a kill or be killed world. So
Mm.
I was starting to bring that other lesson of the energy at that time was, if I don't kill, I'm going to be killed. Like it was at that basic survival level. So though I do remember saying that to you, and then we freeze framed that and took him out, took that soul, and I did have that soul, had you take that soul up to the soul planning meeting and going, given that this experience is happening, what is the life lesson? Like, what is it? And I actually can't remember. I haven't looked at your notes, but you got some wisdom, and I
Yes.
asked you to bring that wisdom back into that soul that was, and so that soul of that time could get a sense of why this horrible thing is happening. And then we
Mm.
played that through his lifetime as a life that was possibly going to be cut short.
Mm.
And actually, I didn't know about, you didn't mention the knives until we came out of that.
Mm.
And then you said, actually, I've had a fear of knives all this life. I've hated them. And it was like, oh, that's really interesting. So it wasn't until after we'd done that
Right. That's right.
that
Yep.
you mentioned about how this time you have always had a fear of knives. And it was like, oh, that's really interesting. So
It is. Yeah. And I felt that relief even again when you said like it was a kill or be killed world, because the thing is that the things these point to can be so subtle. Like, I don't know if I even necessarily would have recognized this at the time, but when we just did that now, even for a second, it's like, yeah, I have often felt this feeling like I've done something horribly wrong and I need to be punished. I've felt that since a young age, and I used to maybe blame it on some religious teaching or whatever, but that didn't quite explain it. Like, what is this? What did I do? I'm just a kid in Pennsylvania. Like, I haven't really done anything. But so these little nuances of things we carry that we get used to, when you start just exploring some of these types of processes, you get a sense of actual relief, and then they make sense often. And that's often the way it is. I found on both sides of the fence, either being the client or the facilitator. It's like the energy does what it needs to do. It takes you where it needs to go. And then you get the cognitive insight of, wow, that explains why I've always been afraid of dogs, or why I've always hated knives, or why I couldn't handle the sight of blood, which is so much usually more effective and efficient than, okay, I'm going to try to dissect my life and figure out what happened, and then I'm going to go try to do a tapping based on what happened. You can do that, or you can just kind of ask these types of open-ended questions. And if it's safe enough, and yeah, you might have to, have done some work, but if you're working with someone like you're going to be able to pace that appropriately. But I don't want to put a
safe,
limit on it, because you can be very inexperienced. And I've definitely worked with people who never, it's like their first session doing anything, and we're like in another lifetime or something. And I'm not even a
absolutely.
quantum trained person. It just goes there,
That's right. And the thing is too, at the level of training, let's say with clinical EFT, that those skills are really good to be able to hold that.
Yes.
We just, we're able to hold a nice, safe place for people to, without dropping them into a trauma capsule, we can hold them in a lovely, safe space because we ourselves won't take ourselves into a trauma and shouldn't, so that's where we need a guide. So part of my role is, why I'm here is I see my role as a guide to walk alongside, to help someone go to those places that our conscious mind has been a gatekeeper to not have us go there. It's like, don't go there, don't go there. But actually, if we want to be free of this, it's like if we have someone we trust who can take us there and clear it. And now let's go and mine the Akash for what are the gifts I've got. Gosh, I was an orator. Let me let my voice be heard. So all of these things where I was playing small, it's like, nah, time to get
Wow.
out there.
Yeah, well, there's
Yeah.
a
And I was thinking
Mhm.
too, there's so much compassion. You know, we have more compassion, say for that soul that was you know, with a sword or a knife or whatever. And when we start to appreciate, actually those energy times were really tough. There have been some very hard energy times for humans. We've come through a lot, you know, with the very dense energies, a lot of fear-based, a lot of trying to control people, and some energies coming in, some people coming in to try and raise things up and have new energies and have more light and love coming in. And you know, the energies of that time didn't support it, and they were killed for it. So as the humanity evolves and changes, there have to be pioneers that are coming in and trying different things, you know.
Yeah, that's important. And I think for that self-compassion thing, because a lot of times there's that perspective of almost like I'm a blank slate. And why am I struggling so much? But, like you described, I mean, you don't even have to go back to maybe your grandparents' parents, even in this country, for there to have experienced slavery. And I mean, it's like you don't even have to go back that far, whether you even believe in like quantum or DNA. Trauma is, you do not have to go far back in history. Why wouldn't we carry that? Why wouldn't that be even as an adaptive mechanism? I mean, if you were born from a mother who was like captive or in this incredibly hardship situation, it would just make sense that we would
Mm.
have to come out wired in such a way to be on edge and looking for the danger everywhere. So we really need to kind of like, yeah, we do live in a modern time and we have the internet and that's all great, but you could be carrying really dense things that can let you cut yourself some slack when you're like, why can't I just stop this habit? It's like, well,
Yeah,
there's a lot there.
that's right. And it's honoring that, actually, you know, if we're in fight or flight or survival mode, that's not a time where we spiritually grow.
Hmm.
It's only once we have cleared those deep fears, those core beliefs, those limiting beliefs. Once those are cleared, then we can start to spiritually grow. Growing doesn't
Mm.
happen when we're in survival mode. So uh, that's why it's exciting to clear this stuff wherever it began. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be consciously known where it is, because then people can tap into, actually, there is a bigger purpose why I'm here, and it's about time. I think what do I want to be? You know, where they start to ask those questions,
Amazing.
and raise the whole vibration of humanity up. It's time. You know, like that. I think there's a lot of people that are feeling it's time. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. And there's a lot of people who are beyond just, okay, what logical thing can, like, the times have gotten tough enough for enough people that it's like, I think a lot of minds are just open to, look, whatever's going to end the suffering, whatever's going to help. I am ready to explore. And yeah, on that note, I mean, there's a million other things we could ask about. And by the way, for those of you watching this, I mean, a lot of doors were opened from the channeled content to the Akashic records to all these different things that if you have questions about, just leave them down below, and then maybe we can do something again if we get questions. But how do people reach you to take a quantum session with you or any other things you
oh,
offer?
sure. Yes, so I've got a website, EFT Serenity, .co.nz or .nz, the last letter of the alphabet, because I'm from New Zealand, I say that letter differently. So yeah, eftserenity.co.nz, and just have a look at my website, and there's booking options there. And yeah, love to work with people if and we can just explore. As I say, there's no beliefs that you have to have. I certainly work very much with whatever is on top for you, and we just follow that. But yeah, that's how they can get hold of me.
Awesome.
I'm in
Well,
New Zealand. I do work over Zoom, so I'm actually in your future, Evan.
yes.
So I do work. This does work over Zoom. I do see most of my clients are overseas
Ours was
actually.
over Zoom, so I can vouch for it.
Yeah, and you were safe, weren't you?
Yes, it was great. Yeah, I highly encourage people to do it at least once, at least to experience a very different experience that's very valuable. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Anything else you wanted to add or say before?
Oh, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to let me give a voice to this.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I want to wish people well. You know, there's that core part of us, I believe, that is asking to be released and to be free. And if that is speaking to you in whatever way, this is one way, but just that we are here for a bigger purpose. We're in really big times, and you know, I love the work you're doing actually, in building that community as well. So I want to honor
Well, thank
you
you.
for the work you're doing as well. Really good to see you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, we'll really appreciate it. And like I said, if people have questions, you can leave them down below in the comments, and we'll find a way to get to that. And yeah, check out Lisa's content. I think you'll really enjoy it. And we will see you all soon, I hope. Take care.